Okay, so thank you to my wonderful parents, Ray and Joyce. They found the Book of Knowledge from the dump, as a matter of fact. Did a bit of research. These are from London, I believe. And they're from the 1950s, prior to the Antarctica Treaty. Found a nice part on Antarctica. Beautiful map. There's some pictures as well. I'm going to read the whole thing to you because I know there's not a lot of information about Antarctica out there. So here it starts. At the beginning of the 20th century, maps of the world showed only a blank around the South Pole. Nations eager for land elsewhere had left this region alone, for it appeared to promise nothing of any real value. Exploration seemed almost impossible. Howling gales buffeted any ship that approached the icebound shores of Antarctica. Nearer approach was made difficult by vast fields of drifting ice. The earliest discoveries were made at the beginning of the 19th century around the meridian 60 degrees west. William Smith in 1819 sighted the South Shetland Islands. A year later, Edward Bransfield, RN, with Smith as pilot, sighted Trinity Land, the northern part of the Graham Land Peninsula. Since 1820, there have been about 170 expeditions to the Antarctic, over 70 of these being British, with the Norwegians and Americans coming second and third in the number of expeditions dispatched. The known coast of Antarctica consists of an ice-laden rampart of capes and cliffs. From this rocky rim, the land slopes upward to a high plateau that surrounds the South Pole. The known portion of this plateau is from 9,000 to 10,000 feet above sea level. On the side toward New Zealand, however, the surface is sunk below sea level, as if a great bite twice as large as the area of France had been taken out of the continent. This forms the Ross Sea. Another bite towards South America forms the Weddell Sea, a region in which the United Kingdom has long claimed sovereignty for several groups of islands, which are situated in the whaling grounds. Great mountain ranges with peaks over 15,000 feet high guard the interior, while the two active volcanoes on Ross Island, Erebus over 13,000 feet and Terror, are like beacons pointed southward. A great ice cap covers nearly all the center of Antarctica. On the South Polar Plateau, the ice is probably between 7,000 and 8,000 feet thick, while the area of the ice cap is about 6 million square miles, enough to cover all the United States and half of Canada. Coal and fossilized tree trunks, plants, and leaves have been discovered within 180 miles of the pole, showing that the climate of the continent was once much warmer, able to support abundant vegetation. Huge glaciers pour down the valleys from the polar plateau. The Beardmore Glacier is 25 miles wide at the top, 8 miles wide at the bottom, and about 100 miles long. Over half of the Ross Sea and a part of the Weddell Sea, the ice cap becomes a great creeping sheet of shelf ice, fed by glaciers and flowing outward at the rate of about 500 feet a year to cover the sea from 200 to 300 miles. The force of the tides working beneath the ice develops a tidal crack across the shelf. Beyond this crack, the shelf breaks up. Icebergs many miles long and broad break off. This exposes the face of the advancing sheet as a huge ice cliff from 50 to 200 feet high and more than 500 miles long, the famous Great Ice Barrier or Ross Ice Barrier.
So you don't have to listen to him the whole time. I'm going to jump in. Wind-blown snowdrift, crevices, and pressure ridges thrown up where the ice passes over islands make travel difficult. Despite its difficulties, the Ross Barrier offers explorers their best route to the South Pole. Since in summer ships can reach the edge of the barrier only about 800 miles from the pole. A similar sheet, the Filchner or the Wilhelm shelf ice, fills the south end of the Weddell Sea. A third great ice sheet, the Shackleton, empties into the Indian Ocean. The Antarctic ice cap is far greater than any ice formation in the Arctic, and Antarctic weather is more continuously severe than in the Arctic. Why is it clear when the geography of the two zones is compared? The North Pole lies in the center of an ocean surrounded by land. Warm currents such as the Gulf Stream mix with the cold polar currents and wash some Arctic shores. The land around the ocean absorbs the heat in the summer, and warm winds blow towards the North Pole. The South Pole is in the middle of a huge continent surrounded by the sea. There is a cold current flowing round the continent. Warm winds from temperate zones never reach Antarctica, and the height of the land increases the cold. Even summer temperatures on the seacoast rarely rise to 32 degrees Fahrenheit, and at the South Pole they remain near zero. In July, which is midwinter in the Antarctic zone, Admiral Byrd recorded a temperature of 80 degrees Fahrenheit below zero. Although this does not break the Arctic record of minus 94 degrees, 126 degrees of frost, established in January 1885 at the Verkhovsken, Siberia, the winter average throughout Antarctica is lower than that in any part of the Arctic zone. Since the moisture of the region is always frozen, rain is unknown except on the more northern seaboards, and even the snowfall is light. High winds prevent accurate measure of the snowfall, but when a food depot buried by Scott in 1903 was visited 6 years later, it was covered by 8 feet and 2 inches of snow. This is the same as about 7.5 inches of rainfall a year. The winds increased the bitterness of the climate. Sir Douglas Mawson, the Australian explorer, said that during 1912 in Admiral Land, the average speed of wind was 50 miles an hour. Winds of tremendous violence over 100 miles an hour are common. A few specimens of flowering plants have been found in Graham Land, but the only vegetation in Antarctica is proper consists of algae, mosses, and lichens. The last have been seen as far south as the Thorn Glacier. The only forms of life so far discovered at any great distance from the sea are mites, microscopic rotifers, and a few tiny wingless insects such as springtails or snow fleas. They are found in sunny pools or moss in midsummer. During the rest of the year, they lie dormant. The ocean around Antarctica, however, teems with life, and water-feeding birds and mammals swarm on the shores. At the bottom of the scale are the microscopic plants called didymos, existing in the sea in such quantities that they stain the waters yellow and color the icebergs with brownish streaks. Upon the diatoms and other tiny organisms feed great schools of shrimp-like creatures. The whole mass of this living food, called plankton, forming the main food supply of fishes.
All right, so my smartass partner got right here about the plankton, and then it goes into some pictures. So I'm going to just read the captions under the pictures now, and she'll get back to the plankton stuff. So under this fantastic map, vast island continent of Antarctica. Unlike the North Pole, which is situated in an ocean, the South Pole is in the middle of a continent, the huge size of which may be judged from the fact that Cape Horn, on the left of the map, is 2,359 statute miles from the South Pole. A number of nations claim portions of Antarctica, and Argentina and Chile dispute the possession by the United Kingdom of certain regions in the Falkland Islands dependencies, including Graham Land. Then over here with the ship, we got safely anchored on the edge of the vast ice sheets of the Antarctic. The exploring ship Terra Nova looks small enough compared with the great iceberg in the foreground of this photograph. From the berg, long, slender icicles hang down, a reminder that even in these regions of perpetual cold, ice may melt and freeze again as it flows. The ship, equipped for sail as well as for steam, is typical of those whose names Erebus, Terror, Endurance, Discovery figure as prominently in the epic story of Antarctic exploration as do those of the gallant men who manned them. Then we got the foreigner and the natives. These two fine photographs convey some idea of the size and awesome grandeur of those terrors of the Antarctic waters, the icebergs. The upper berg, towering over the puny explorer, has been imprisoned for months in the frozen sea, and owes to the wind and weather its strange outline, so like a castle made in icing sugar. When young, it was just as fresh and clean-cut as the huge floating berg seen in the lower photograph. That all the Antarctic is not ice, however, will be plain from the outcrops of cold, black rock around which the penguins are promenading. Over here we got the features of the landscape. Not 1 in 10,000 of the readers of this book is ever likely to see the ice-strewn seas and coasts of the Antarctic. So it is from photographs like these that most people must gain knowledge of that far distant region. The upper view shows some of the weird sculpturing that takes place when an iceberg has encountered the forces of the elements. In the background is Mount Erebus, a volcano. In the lower photograph, the level sea ice, a frozen expanse of the sea itself, has expanded to form a great pressure ridge, blocks being forced upwards, making an impossible barrier. These pictures are of Christmas Eve in the Antarctic summer. When it is Christmas in the Northern Hemisphere, it is midsummer in the Antarctic, although most European observers would find the prospect of boundless snow and ice sufficiently seasonable. One remarkable feature is the perpetual daylight occasioned by the midnight sun. Thus, this picture by Herbert Poynting, the photographer accompanying Captain Scott's last expedition, was taken at night on December 24th, 1910. The calm beauty of the scene, so remote in its frozen grandeur from the farthest limits of civilization, makes an impressive picture. And over here we have the volcanic fire amidst Antarctic ice. On Ross Island off South Victoria Land in Antarctica, the explorer sees the strange spectacle of a volcano, Mount Erebus, sending up clouds of smoke from its eternal fires above a land of ice and snow. Mount Erebus was discovered by Captain James Ross in 1841, and he named it after one of the two ships of his expedition. It is the most southerly active volcano in the world.
Those were some nice photos, and here we go again. Plankton is also the principal food of the baleen, or the whalebone whales. The toothed whales of the region, such as the sperm whale and the bottlenose and the porpoise, feed upon squid and fish, while the large dolphin called the killer whale eats seals and penguins. Antarctic seals lack the fur undercoat which makes commercial sealskin. The commonest seal is called the crab eater. These seals float about on ice floes and dive for their food. The fish-eating Weddell seal is next in numbers. Its hide yields leather, and explorers value its meat and oil. This seal cuts holes through the ice in winter to crawl out of the surface to sleep. The 7-foot Ross seal is seen about Graham Land and the Weddell Sea. Huge sea elephants breed on the Antarctic islands, while the dangerous sea leopard is common on the northernmost parts of the continent. As there are no land animals proper, such as polar bears or men, the habits of seals are entirely different from those in the Arctic. In the south, a seal will climb out on top of an ice floe or the shore and sleep for days. If woken up by an explorer and frightened, the seal will go farther from the water, where he only knows of danger from killer whales. In the Arctic, a seal sleeps for not more than 30 seconds at a time. Then he puts his head up to look for danger from polar bears or men. If he is suspicious, he returns at once to the water, where he is fairly safe. The most interesting birds in the region are the penguins. Most of the penguin species rear their young during the short Antarctic summer, but the hardy emperor penguins raise their chicks in the winter. The albatross ranges the southern seas and occupies islands north of the continent for its breeding season. 5 species of petrel have been noted: the fulmar and the Antarctic, the giant, the snowy, and the Wilson's stormy petrel. Gulls are abundant, as are also shags.
Well, I like trees. Men risk their lives exploring these regions to find answers to scientific questions. Studies of the Antarctic ice cap may help to explain the many ice ages which other parts of the Earth went through in the past. Another question is whether the ice cap is breaking up and melting at the edges faster than it is being restored through snowfall. If so, the oceans of the world will continue to rise. If the entire ice cap should melt, distant coastal cities would be deep underwater. Antarctica may have been linked to other continents in the past, and scientists would like to learn if it served as a land bridge for the passage of animals and plants. Meteors, the Earth's magnetism and cosmic rays can be studied to great advantage in the Antarctic. Let me read that again. Meteors, the Earth's magnetism and cosmic rays can be studied to great advantage in the Antarctic. And there has been considerable investigation in the meteorological, hydrographical, and geographical fields. Until recent times, governments applied maritime law in governing their citizens who visited Antarctica. Then a desire to regulate whaling led several governments to claim various Antarctic regions. Such claims also would give control over any minerals found. In 1903, might be 1908, British letters patent named the governor of the Falkland Islands as governor of the Falkland Islands dependencies, which include South Georgia, a permanent whaling station, the South Orkney Islands and South Shetlands and Graham Land. The Ross dependency, which includes the Ross Sea and the route to the pole, was established under the governor of New Zealand in 1923. And the Antarctic territories were placed under the authority of Australia by an order in council of February 7, 1933. This order recognized the French claim to Adélie Land. In 1928, the British waived claims to Bouvet Island in favor of Norway, whose claim to Queen Maud Land was recognized in 1939. In 1943, the British government arranged to carry on scientific and survey work in the Falkland Islands dependencies as part of a long-term investigation of the land areas which would supplement the work on the oceans carried out over a number of years by the Discovery Committee of the Colonel Office. 2 permanent bases were set up in 1944 at Port Lockroy and Deception Island. The following year, the expedition was considerably reinforced, and a total of 6 bases in Graham Land are now permanently manned, where much meteorological investigation is carried out. These are stocked at regular intervals by the relief ship John Briscoe, a converted boom defense vessel. In 1948, Australia and South Africa set up permanent scientific stations, and France renewed her interest in Admiral Land. From 1936 onwards, both Argentina and Chile laid claims to lands in the Falkland Island dependencies. And after the Second World War, in spite of British protests, both set up military and scientific bases there. In 1950, a joint Norwegian-British-Swedish expedition brought from Europe in the converted sailing ship Norsel landed in Queen Maud Land, due south of South Africa, and remained there until January 1952. Surveying and the study of rocks, ice, especially glaciers, and weather were carried on under the leadership of Captain Guyever, a Norwegian. This was the first expedition to this almost unknown part of Antarctica. And that's it, folks. Hope you enjoyed your trip to Antarctica.